Hayley, I'm excited that you're here. My dad used to have this little phrase he'd say a lot, something like, I'll try to recreate his sort of tone too. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Now, I think he was quoting some TV show from before my time. That's where he gets a lot of these little things he said. But so the context would be like, he made me a chili dog, and then I take a bite and I spill chili on my shirt, and I am frustrated. And he says, "Oh, I love it when a plan comes together," as if he'd like meant to soil my shirt with chili. The reason I thought of that is when I asked Hayley to come speak 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did not anticipate that we would have this horrific event in the Pacific Northwest that would put us so in touch with our with nature and so aware of our relationship with nature, with the natural world. And it's wonderful to, at least for many of us, to be out of the smoky haze, but we also recognize that it's not even close to over for a lot of people. It's just kind of begun in a lot of ways, as far as the hardship created by the devastation of the fires. All that to say, I think that we are very much ready and in need of what you have to say, Hayley, so take it away.
Thanks, Matt. I'll be sharing my screen and talking with you a little bit, so bear with me. So Rua Benjamin writes, "Remember to imagine and craft the worlds you cannot live without, just as you dismantle the ones you cannot live within." My name's Hayley Hathaway, and I'm here today. I'm very grateful to be worshiping and praying with you. What makes this experience a little different is that I'm actually talking with you today from the future. It might look like I'm in a normal place in a normal time, the magic of Zoom, but I'm actually living right now in the year 2050. I want to share with you some of my reflections on this time travel that I've done and offer to you a vision for our work as friends. Matt shared a little bit about me, but 30 years ago in 2020, I was 34 years old. I was working as the communications coordinator of Quaker Earth Care Witness, a network of North American friends taking spirit-led action to address the ecological crises of our times. The group came together a few decades before that, calling for the Religious Society of Friends to live more deeply into a testimony of stewardship, to rethink what integrity meant in the context of earth care. They called for us to see that of God in all beings and acknowledged the need for spiritual transformation to better care for the planet and for all of us. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico on Tewa land and worship with friends there. And I'm currently in Connecticut on Tungus land. So 30 years ago, this spring, we faced a global pandemic. Over the course of just a few weeks, all of our schools shut down. Restaurants and bars closed, movie theaters went dark, businesses were shuttered because of a contagious virus. We watched real-life horror stories. People were dying in hospital hallways, morgues beyond capacity, a healthcare system completely unequipped to meet the needs of the moment. Millions lost their jobs. That spring in 2020, we thought it would be solved quickly, and it wasn't. Later that year, uncontrollable wildfires turned the west skies orange. Day became night. Hurricanes and heat waves compounded to wreck the South, to wreck southern coastline communities. In the Midwest that summer, a never-before-seen inland hurricane wrecked almost the majority of the crops and homes and crushed silos. It wasn't just the natural world that was being harmed then. Black people were being killed unmercilessly by police officers. Those who had stakes in business as normal went to more and more extremes to uphold the status quo, frightened by the growing force of organized protesters calling for big changes. Sometimes fascism felt imminent. You are in this moment right now. Let's take a moment to look away from our screens and take a deep collective breath. In and out. In those few months and weeks, it felt often like it was too much. Heather was speaking to that. I remember wondering if we could go back to the way we were. Arundhati Roy writes, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It's a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudices and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. And you know what? I'm here to say today, talking to you from 2050, that we did imagine another world and we did fight for it. It took a global emergency, the collapse of our economy, impending irreversible climate chaos, real attempts to overthrow democracies, but we did succeed in creating a new society, one based on cooperation, on solidarity, and interdependence. We're calling it the Great Transition. It's definitely been an intense few decades and we're not done yet, but we've come so far. Now, most people have food and housing and education, employment, healthcare, and we're working towards rebuilding a livable planet for everyone. I'm here to share a few of the changes we made to get to where we are. So first, we got intimate with grief and loss. Second, we started the long process of dismantling supremacy and disconnection. And third, we harnessed our collective power. The enormity and the brutality of the pandemic, coupled with climate chaos, tested our personal and collective mental health. I'm sure you're with me on this one, but I remember when things got started, I filled my calendars with virtual social activities, consumed countless hours of online content, obsessively watched the news, anxiously scrolled through Facebook and Instagram. Remember those? I tried to plan. I tried to work. I tried to maintain the manic pace set by society back then, in our unrelenting push to produce and extract, and to avoid messy feelings. Does that sound familiar? In their book, Coming Back to Life, which served as one of our roadmaps for this transition, Joanna Macy and Molly Brown write, "Pain is the price of consciousness in a threatened and suffering world. It is not only natural, it is an absolutely necessary component of our collective healing." And I knew that truth, and still I scrolled. But together, in our communities and spaces like this, we made space for death. We became more intimate with it. I realized that the grief of losing so many people I loved, for losing so much of the land that I loved, and for losing a lot of what I imagined the future to be when I was younger, means that I needed a new way to let my tears flow, to move my energy, and to find space to grieve. So again, let's take a deep breath, look away from our screens, and find something in your room or look out a window and connect with something out there that feels eternal. I'm in Connecticut, and living in the Southwest means that I don't spend a lot of time around tall trees. And here, the oaks are so tall and filled with so many birds. And that helps me reconnect. Turning away feels easier, but I know in my own experience that that only works in the short run. And I have to remind myself of that pretty much all the time. So after becoming intimate with grief, which is a lifelong process and runs parallel to the rest of it, what we did in this journey of the great turning, of the great transition, was to open ourselves up to a system based on cooperation and caring. To do that, we had to do the work of dismantling supremacy and disconnection. As part of Quaker Earth Care Witness in 2020, we were challenging friends to recognize the sacredness of all life, to live in right relationship with all creation. And to do that, we needed to do some unlearning first. We joined with other environmental groups and with other Quaker groups to question the institutionalized racism that was part of our history and our culture and change it. Hop Hopkins of the Sierra Club wrote at the time, "I really believe in my heart of hearts, after a lifetime of thinking and talking about these issues, that we will never survive the climate crisis without ending white supremacy. Here's why. You can't have climate change without sacrifice zones. And you can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people. And you can't have disposable people without racism." We felt this truth in our bones. Enough of us said enough. This is a picture of southern New Mexico and the sacrifice zones there that they've destroyed the land to frack for natural gas. This is Quaker Bobby Block in West Virginia, protesting against a factory that is going to be built in a low-income community of color. The company has every intention of making a sacrifice zone here, a place where profits outweigh the health of communities, especially communities that are marginalized and not organized. to take action against these bigger powers. So together, collectively, we had to learn that there is no way, just like there is no other. And as friends, we had a lot to work with. William Penn wrote in 1693, "It would go a long way to caution and direct people in their use of the world, that they were better studied and knowing in the creation of it. For how could they find the confidence to abuse it, while they should see the great Creator stare them in the face in all and every part of it?" So we felt our deep interconnectedness, the miracle of creation all around us. We put our faith in each other, in collective care, in the land, in the seeds, in our local healers and caretakers, in Black and Indigenous knowledge and leadership. And with that shift, we harnessed our collective power. We remember how it was. The virus was so contagious that one infected person, even if they didn't have any symptoms, could move around normally in the world and infect dozens of others. This helped us understand that deep, intimate connectedness. And if one person could make such a big difference in keeping each other healthy and safe, imagine the impact that millions made. So right when the virus started, these mutual aid networks sprang up quickly to help the most vulnerable. And I'm here to say that these networks are still growing strong and have blossomed into amazing things. That these once marginalized communities created newly imagined unions, cooperatively owned housing, disability justice. They closed prisons and detention centers, demanded environmental justice. In the years following 2020, Quakers turned their meeting houses and churches over to these groups and shared their expertise in decentralized decision-making, organizing for the long haul, and faith in action. Here's a picture of Cedar Green in California. He's a young friend, and here he is working in a community garden as part of Pacific Yearly Meetings mutual aid program that they got started in the summer of 2020. Where I live in Santa Fe, it was the teenagers already working on climate change advocacy who quickly pivoted to build these mutual aid networks. They understood how interconnected all of this work is. Our local Quaker meeting, Santa Fe Friends, found creative ways to support the youth movements. Here's Pam Gilchrist. She's 80, supporting the mass youth climate strikes. Her sign says, "The house is on fire, the children are inside." She and I joined the group of students in the other picture to get arrested in the New Mexico governor's office, saying that time is up and that we must take bold action to make sure that these kids have a healthy and livable future. Together we said, "Our future is in your hands, climate action now." Heather mentioned this too, and this bold vision that the, much younger, even younger than me, these teens have, reminds me of this prophetic statement: "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young ones will see visions. Your old ones will dream dreams." So in that spirit, across the country, small groups of strategic and visionary young people, often guided by Quaker elders, raised their voices for projects like the Green New Deal, a 10-year plan to mobilize us toward clean and renewable energy, guarantee a living wage for everyone who wants a job, and transitioning in a just and equitable way from fossil fuels. So we made these changes through real creativity and big risks. We had to put our bodies on the line. We demanded bold action that transformed society. And it was with an intimate relationship with grief, a deep connected faith, a new understanding of our power, and with fierce hopefulness, we used our collective imagination to envision a transformation. Another world was possible, and we brought it to life. Thank you.
Hayley, did you want to introduce these, or would you like me to?
Sure. So I invite you, as we worship together, to join me in what I was calling radical imagining, which for me was a necessary thing to do as a response to just how deep and difficult this season has been for me, and I think for so many people in my community. So for these queries, I invite you to travel with me to 2050 and open yourself up to the questions: what does this 2020 moment look like from 30 years ahead of time, from 30 years into the future? If you were talking to yourself today from the year 2050, what wisdom would you share? And how are you feeling led now to seek transformation in yourself, in your community? We'll harken back to the Arundhati Roy quote, who asks us, what luggage must we leave behind? What must you leave behind?